Hello everyone, my name is Enoch Kipngeno, and in our today's lesson we shall be looking about introduction to computer. And in our class today we shall be defining some terminologies from computer and other definition in this class. So before we start, why can we believe and pray? Mighty God, I come and before your presence, you be with us in this class from the start until we end this class. For I pray, believe, and trust in Jesus' name. Amen. Now let's get into our lesson for today. And before even we define what is computer, we need to define some terminologies, which is data, information, processing, and according to you, what is data, or what is information, or what is process? And let's start with data. When we say data, these are new facts that are meaningless to the user and cannot be used to make any decision. The example of these are numbers and letters. When you write 27 plus 24 are data, they are meaningless to you. Let's define the second terminology, which is processing, so that we can combine all of them. We say processing refers to now the way you manipulate now the data to get a meaningful now information, which is information. And these processes are like example of these processes is like arithmetic operation, which is addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. All of them are processing, and there are so several many processes or processing that can be taking place in your computer. For example, even clicking your mouse, typing. When you type, it will be processed before it is displayed in your screen. There must be a process. There must be a signal sent from your keyboard or whichever, or maybe mouse, to the central processing unit of a computer to be processed now first before it is being displayed. Now, what are these kind of things that are being displayed in your screen, or what? Yeah, mostly in your screen. It is information. And how can we define an information? Information we can define as data that are computed into now useful information, or the other definition of information, now we can say it is a processed data. We need now to combine all the three terminologies, which is data, processing, and information. And let's use an example of your results, your midterm exams. I know, let's take an example of, let's say a student get, maybe Brian get in computer studies 55, and get in mathematics 70, and get in another subject, which subject? Biology 50. Now, 50 for computer, 60 for biology, those are data now. But your grade or the average now will be the information, because to get the average, it is you add all and divide by the number of subjects you take. So that means the 50 or 50, 60 will be our data. Processing now, it is average in our case, and the information now will be the total average of the what you learn. Now let's get now to define now what is computer. After you have defined what is the data, what is the information, and what is processing, what is computer? Anybody who can try to define for us a computer? And before even you define a computer, there are some things you need to know about a computer. Number one, a computer uses electricity for it to work, or power. Let's say a power. So computer must use a power to work. Number two, there must be input that your computer will now process. Number three, Here should be output you will get after. Computer process your input. Now let's define a computer. A computer now can be defined as an electronic device that takes in data in raw form, process it, and give out in another form, which is called information. Or the simplest definition of a computer, you can say it is an electronic device that accepts input, process it, and give you information. So write that one, or someone else can try. It is an Now we have defined what is computer and say it is an electronic device that accepts input, process it, and give you information. Let's go back now to process, and in the process we have 4 processes which are now in processing cycle, and let's have a look at
data processing cycle. So in this data processing cycle, first, as the diagrammatically you can show, as the data we have to prepare the data, as I told you, to collection of data is very important. So that is data preparation. Okay, so we have collected all the data. Okay, so that is raw facts. Then from this data we are giving the input. Okay, that is we have data input. We have data input. Okay, from this data input, what should be done? It should process. So whatever the data you are giving from the input, it should process. Okay, that is your data processing can be done. Data processing. So ultimately, as the processing happens, so your data output, so what is the result you want, so that should be occur, that is your data output. And as we are processing the data, so your data should be stored, so that is your storage. We have a data storage. You have to store the data. So this is the basic data processing cycle. As you have to prepare the data, means collection of the data. Next you have to give the data input. Next the processing will happen. Okay, so next from this processing we will get the output. Ultimately whatever you processed, that should be stored in the your storage device. So this is the basic life cycle. So here first one we have the data input. So as we collect the data, will all collection happens, then we start inputting the data. So this input can be done with your any device, like you have the keyboard or you take the mouse. Okay, so you may any other devices which can be used for input. Okay,
we have 4 processes, and the first one we say it is whereby we input data. The second one we say where we process it. The third one is where we now store it, and the last one is where we output it. Let's see now these 4 processes. As we say, it is data input, data process, where the next one is where we store it, and the last one it is output.
so the first one, that is we have the data input. We have to give the data input. So in this, the input may be anything. It may be letters. So input may be letters. Input may be symbols. Okay, so whatever the input you want to give, or input may be any numbers, or input may be any shapes. Okay, or input may be any images. We have to give any images, or whether it may be a raw material which will be into the computer system that need to be processed. Okay, so whatever you are given from this input, it should be processed. Okay, so as we are given the input, so here whatever the input we are giving into the English, okay, English language, but it should be converted into machine code. So we are given into English language, so English to machine code. So as you know that computer will understand only the machine language, that is 0 and 1. So whatever the letters or symbols or numbers or shapes, images, whatever the data you enter, so that is in the English, it should be converted into the machine code by your input device. Okay, that is the first one, that is data input.
Before we get into the second one, we need to identify the types of devices which are being used in each and every step. In the first step, we may see letters, symbols, numbers, shapes, and image. And these can be input by letters, symbols can be input by a keyboard. Even another input that can be used to input the data into the computer is a mouse, and the other one is scanner, which scanner can be used even to input images and more. And we have also barcode reader, which is being used to input barcodes into the computer. Let's continue to the second one.
So after the data input, we have to process, that is we call it as data processing. Data processing. So in this, as you know, the processing is a series of actions or the operations. Okay, the processing is a series of actions or operations. So as we can do some actions, we can do some operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, or you can do the logical operations. Okay, from the input data, whatever, so how it will process from whatever the input data you give. Okay, so from the input data to generate the output. Okay, from the input data to generate output. So as we are given the input, so the data will be processed. So it may be any operation or it may be any action. The series of actions, series of operations can be processed, and this conversion of data into the information, converting of data into information. So as it should be come into the actual process. Okay, process of the data, it should come, that is information. As I told you, that is converting of data into the information, which should be done by the CPU. So that is central processing unit. So this processing happens in your CPU. So whatever the input you give, from that input all the operations will be done, and the input data to be generated as a result of output, and the data whatever you give, that should be processed and it should be come into the form of information that will be done in your CPU, that is central processing unit. Okay, that is we have data processing. And third one, we have the storage. Okay, there is a storage. So as you know, we can store the data. So the storage of data with the two types, one is with the primary and with secondary. The data can be stored with the primary and the secondary. So as the primary data, it temporarily holds the data. Okay, it will be your primary data which will be temporary, as we have the RAM. Okay, so temporarily holds the data, but that is for the storage. Okay, so holds the data waiting to be processed, process. So that is where will happen, that is in the case of RAM, that is your RAM and ROM are the primary storage. So and the RAM, and it is inside your system, okay, and it is inside the computer. The RAM, we have the slot that will be inside the system. So that is the primary storage which will be done for the temporary. And as you know, the secondary, where the data stored permanently, okay, data stored. So as we have number of devices to store the data, but ultimately in the CPU we have the hard disk, okay, which is the storage of the permanent data, okay. So that is permanently, data stored permanently, okay. So as you can use the different devices, so the first device which will be in the system, that is your hard disk. So you can use some floppy disk, still floppy disk are outdated, and you are using some CD, or you are using some pen drive, that is USB, okay. So which will be stored permanently, that is secondary storage device. So as the data will be processed and it will be stored in the primary first, that will be temporary, and as the data will be stored in the permanently, that is secondary storage.
So before we get to the last one, which is now the output, we say in storage we have two types of storages, whereby we have primary storage and secondary storage. And when we say primary storage, this is whereby it holds data for temporarily, for example a RAM. And for those who may be not knowing a RAM, this is an example of a RAM. A RAM look like this one. This one is an example of a RAM. It is found inside either for a laptop, for a computer. Each and every computer has a RAM. So when you hear a 4GB RAM, this is now what we are talking about. It look like this one. And then when we go to secondary storages, whereby we shall be talking about those that store data permanently. For example, an hard disk. An example of an hard disk is this one. An example of a floppy disk is this one, and CD. Even a flash disk can be also example of a secondary storage because it stores data for future reference. Most of the secondary storage devices, these are one which store data for future reference. Like we say hard disk, we say floppy disk, a compact disk, and we have the last one which is a flash disk.
Okay, so that is your third one in the data processing cycle, that is storage. As the last, which you should get the output based on what the input you are given. So what the result you want, okay, so that is your output. So fourth one, we have the output, okay, as the result obtained after the processing, okay, because after the processing only you should get the result, okay. So the result obtained after the processing. So as the CPU process the data, okay, processing the data, after processing the data, okay, and must be presented in the user, to the user, okay, whatever the output you need, that should be presented for the users, okay. Data must be presented, so whatever the output that should need, that should be given to the particular user, must be presented to the user, and as it is given to the user in the user understandable form, in the user understandable form. So user has to understand what the output is, okay, and this output may be, as you can save and you can see in the system, or you can save it and you can take the printout. So as you can have the soft copy, you can call it as a soft copy and hard copy. So as if you want to see the output in the soft copy, that is you can see in the system. So if you want to take a printout, or if you want to see the output, that will be in the hard copy, that will be your printer, and you can see in the paper, that is the output will come into the result. Okay, so that is the output which can be obtained after processing the data. So as this is the life cycle, as we are processing the data, which will be data input. First you have to give the input, then the processing will happen, means the operations will happen, and the operations as data to the information will done into the CPU, and it will store the data as we have the primary and the secondary. First it will store in the temporary, next the permanent, that is the secondary. As the result 100%, the output should come, the result should be obtained for the processing of the data as the user understandable form. So this is all about data processing cycle.
This is the last now process of the data processing cycle, which is output. And when we say output, this is the results now obtained after processing the data. And this is presented using a soft copy and hard copy. And for you to get an hard copy, you maybe use a device like a printer. We have plotters, we have several kind of devices that can produce for us hard copy. For the soft copy, we have screens. For example, a screen for TV can be also be used as a device to produce the output, a screen for computer, among other, and a projector also, among other devices that can be used to produce the output. So that one is the entire process of data processing cycle. And as we said, we start from we input the data, we use some devices, as we say, like keyboard. We come to the next step, which is now we process data. We use CPU, which means central processing unit. We go to the third one, whereby now we store it using memories, and we say we have two types of memories, which is RAM and ROM. We come now to the fourth one, where we say it is an output, and in this case we are outputting the results of the processed data, and this can be used as soft copy, can be produced as soft copy or hard copy. And for soft copy we say we can use screen, for hard copy we can use printers. So thank you. Let's now get into the very last part of our lesson today, which is now differences between data and information. Let us see now the last part of this lesson, which is the differences between data and information. And as we said, data is raw facts, and in the other hand, we say information are the processed data. Why can we start now looking the differences between data and information? Now, who may guess what is data, or what might be the first difference between data and information? Anyone with a guess, or anyone with something you can say? So, before when we start, we need to know the both definition of data and the definition of information. And as we say, data is a raw fact which is yet to be processed, and we say information is now the processed data. When we get to the differences, we shall be using the definition. And our first difference will be data is a raw fact. As we say, data is something that we enter into the computer, so it has not been processed, so it qualifies to be raw fact. And in the other hand, we say information is processed data, which is the output now. After in our second process, which we say it is the process in processing cycle, we say it is the process, and this is whereby a computer CPU processing data which is raw to give you the output which is meaningful to you. So meaning after you process data, we get output which is processed data. Our second, you can say, data are numbers, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And when we sum or when we get a average of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, there is a result we shall get. And that one will qualify to be our information in this case because we can use the results of average to maybe give the position. So meaning the results of data, which we say data is a numbers, it is, we say data is the results of it. For example, average. When we go to the third one, we say data now has no meaning to the user, and information in that hand has the meaning to the user. For instance, in our videos, in our last video, we saw that the output is the result that is being displayed on our output devices. So meaning we are able to use output of the data, processed data, meaning that it is meaningful to us. And I think that is the end of our class today. And thank you very much for this class. Our next class will be seeing about characteristics of computers, and so go and learn them. Make sure you know something. Make sure you have something to say in our class, and whoever will come to our class now, knowing all the characteristics of computer, there will be a reward. So long as you know about at least 5 characteristics, there will be a reward for you. So have a beautiful day.